I really appreciated the opening, Walter, and the comments. Maybe I'll tack on here. I'll reread what Walter wrote a little bit. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of God, whereby ye are sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. I've thought to myself before, I don't really know the difference between, maybe Brett would know better, but there's all these different words. There's gossip, slander, backbiting. I think there's a few more. I don't really know how to define them. I just kind of have an idea of what they are. They're just sort of in this category. And I really, this definition that's been brought out recently I feel like been an improvement in my mind, not that we're going to be judged for every idle word. And I guess I would have thought before idle word is just, oh, look at the sky, or just not very productive words, but especially like words that are spoken that aren't going to be productive, that aren't going to bear fruit, that aren't going to edify. And you have this idea of gossip, of people just sharing other people's business. Then there's complaining, sharing faults of others. There's all these different sort of twists on it, or specific applications of it. But in general, I think at the end Walter had a conclusion there, and that the goal is love. And this is the thing, I want to encourage and confess, that I'm working on and want to work on, catching myself, setting a watch before your mouth, thinking before you speak, being able to recognize when this thing is happening. It's in us. There's something in us that makes us want to talk about other people's faults, other people's problems, people's offenses against you. And there's something in us that wants to listen to it as well. Jesus gave us that prescription. I think it's Matthew 18, somebody has a fault against you, or if you someone trespasses against you, I think it says go to them personally. If they won't hear you, then take somebody else. And then you get this feeling of like he's trying to minimize the exposure of this thing. It's not edifying. If somebody doesn't, when somebody repents, that's edifying and it's done. So we want to practice that, minimizing exposure of complaints, especially of other people. That if you knew this guy, you'd know this is a really good impression of him. But I heard a guy talking one time about this topic, and he's a funny guy, animated guy, and he said, if someone comes to you talking a complaint about somebody else, you stop him and say, did you talk to him about it, brother? Well, then don't talk to me about it. And if you knew him, you know that was a good impersonation of him, because that's how he talked. Anyway, I appreciated that, and somebody comes to you with a complaint, you stop. Did you talk to them about it? Well, then don't talk to me about it. That's something that's something we can have in our tool belt, in our arsenal of weapons. That's stop that thing and just check it. The person speaking should have checked it before they spoke it. But if someone speaks to you, you can ask yourself or ask them, like, what's what's the fruit here? What are we going to accomplish here by me listening to your complaint about this other person, or how this other person has offended you? Now, I think that there are exceptions. I think, parents, children talking to their parents, probably talking to your spouse could be an exception. Possibly talking to elders are exceptions. But I think one of the problems is too often we always think, well, this is an exception. I know I'm going to be complaining about somebody else, and I know you're not supposed to do that, but this is an exception. And anyway, we always, it feels good. You feel important. Like I know I'm not supposed to, but I'm important and you're important, and we just want to. I just really appreciate that. The exception should always be that somehow that we're talking about this because some fruit's gonna some fruit's gonna come of it. Some good is going to come of it. Maybe somebody needs advice how to proceed, or the person is going. If somebody comes to me with a complaint against somebody else, and I say, maybe there'd be an exception to, I'm going to go with them or give them, excuse me. Anyway, I guess we would be careful not always thinking we're making exceptions. For me, it's easier for me to see, if I hear somebody has something against me and they didn't come to me about it, or said something that they didn't say to me, that hurts. That's real easy to see. That person did wrong, but do we ask ourselves? And I find this thing, I can see that really clearly, but then when I think, do I do that? And I think too often the answer is yes, that I make exceptions, or that I'm not careful with my mouth. Anyway, we can use that. You can get that good perspective when you consider, what if somebody else was doing this? I think, when Jesus said, do unto others as you'd have them do to you, he's trying to tell you how to adjust your perspective. Another good one I heard recently, if you're talking to somebody about a problem, that person should either be part of the problem or part of the solution. If somebody's not part of the problem or part of the solution, then it's not going to edify them. It's not going to help them to just have this information, to just hear about it. And I especially appreciate Walter's conclusion. I think we can't really go wrong there. And even if you do go wrong there, it's easily forgivable if we are checking our motives, checking our words. I think we need to recognize that our flesh likes to do that, both to speak about unprofitable things, I don't know why, and to listen to it makes you feel important that that you get to have this information. You're worthy to have this information, and that's not the way. God doesn't want things like that to spread, to get around. He wants healing and love and goodness, and we ought to recognize our flesh, some carnal part of us is hungry to hear about other people's faults, and our spirit should be wanting to keep that information out of our ears, keep that information out of other people's ears. That's the thing we're warring against. That's the thing we're trying to participate in, is minimizing others' faults and others' exposures as much as we can. It says at the end there, if the person doesn't repent, eventually it gets out. But we should be warring against that, putting forth effort to work against that.
Yeah, I guess a couple thoughts about that. So yeah, I guess, Brother Buddy, I guess if you have a situation and you're not using names, but you're actually seeking advice from another person, you're just describing a situation, I don't know how to deal with this situation, you leave names out, that would be fine, right? Because it is about I don't know how to approach this and even talk to the person, and I'm not sure they're going to listen to me. You know, I mean, I'm just giving a possible scenario, but you're leaving names out, you're seeking advice. Like, that would be different than what you just described, right? That would be, would you agree? But if you don't mention names, yeah. Okay. Yeah, so like one exception to what you were saying, I would say I feel pretty strongly about that. Like, I bumped into some people that, and I have one person in particular I was talking to somebody about recently that is pretty influential as, you know, as being a missionary and going around preaching different churches and really like seen as like, I don't know what other word to use than a leader or whatever. And just there's all kind of problems there. I don't feel bad at all about talking about the experience that I had with that person, how I really didn't know he was bad until I met him and was invested in his ministry, and just talking about that. Like, I think it's important for people to know where the wolves are. That would be probably the one exception I could think of. So if anybody else had other thoughts on that, I would love to hear them. So
Yeah, I told my family last night I was going to share this. And I thought it's been a couple comments back, or maybe it was even before. It's been a little while back. Brother Robert shared what you shared about the prisoners and the Hallmark cards and Father's Day. And my story, testimony is somebody else's testimony. A story of somebody else's testimony involves those things too. I thought kind of, I was blessed you brought it up. When we were on this trip, last trip to Ohio, one of my wife's cousins shared this testimony with me. So this is not his testimony either, but we both know the situation and we know the people. So I was familiar with it. Something happened, maybe more than one thing happened, but something particularly grievous thing happened, a sin on the part of this man's father that caused a physical and emotional separation and I think and unforgiveness and bitterness to set in. And time went on, quite a bit of time, and the father was getting older and closer to his death. This man went to a store, and he wanted to buy his dad a Father's Day card, and he went inside to the, like you said, the Hallmark cards. They're like canned or not from the heart, you might say. You know, it's not something you write. You find one that try to say what you want to say. And he picked one up and opened it, and he read it. It just didn't fit. And he put it back, and he picked another one up and read it. And he just realized that he did not feel this way at all towards his dad. And he became convicted. He said, I realized that if I don't forgive, because he's familiar with the scriptures, if I can't forgive my dad, then I'm just going to go to hell. And he just left the store, went back out to his truck, and just cried out to God to help him. be able to forgive. And then he did. He went back, visited his dad, and forgave him, and they just had a blessed short time together there. The dad's passed away now, but he was I don't know, like most of those prisoners you were talking about, maybe they just didn't have a dad, but also maybe they just had never forgiven their dad. And that's a prison that you put yourself in. And there's one of the 10 Commandments was honor your father and mother, that it may be well with you. The point is not honor your father and mother for their benefit. The point is honor your father and mother that it may be well with you. If you can't come to a place of honoring your parents, then you're going to really struggle. You're going to despise yourself, because ultimately you came from your parents, and your flesh is their flesh, and so we're the ones who benefit when we honor our parents. I'm sure our parents appreciate it too, but they don't need it as much as we do.
Yeah, Brother Will's not here, and it was his comment yesterday about Psalm 147 that it lifted me up. And I just want to read 10 verses from there, maybe 11. And if I cry, I'm sorry, especially on Pauline's birthday. If I'm crying, please forgive me. But Psalm 147, 1 to 10. Find it. Praise the Lord. It is good to sing praises. I'm crying already. Praise the Lord. It is good to sing praises to our God, for it is pleasant, and his praise is comely. The Lord has built up Jerusalem. He gathers together the outcasts of Israel. He heals the broken in heart and binds up their wounds. He tells the number of the stars and calls them out by their names. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and of great power. His understanding is infinite. The meek the Lord lift up the meek, and he casts the wicked down to the ground. Sing unto the Lord with thanksgiving. Sing praise upon the harp unto our God, who governs the heavens with clouds, who prepares rain for the earth, who makes grass to grow upon the mountains. He gives to the beast his food, and to the young ravens which cry. He delights not in the strength of the horse, he takes not pleasure in the legs of a man. The Lord takes pleasure in them that fear him, in those that hope for his mercy. And there's a few verses in there that really hit me when it said, he heals the broken in heart. And it's not just because someone that you love dearly has died, but he heals all those broken in heart. The one that Norman said, the man, right? He broke down. And so, I want to talk about, I'm almost done, but he heals the broken in heart and binds up their wounds. And if you combine that with some other Psalms, like Psalm 103, where it says, he knows our frame. He knows that we're just dust. And he has pity on us. We're just dust. So I read this morning, I read the Psalms usually every morning, at least 3, try to 5. Oh, what was it? I read Psalm 8. How does it start out? O Lord thy God, how excellent is thy name above all the earth. When I consider the sun, the moon, what is man that you take thought of us? What is Leroy that God takes thought of us? He made him above all the birds and the things and given dominion. How excellent your name. How excellent is your name. So what are all of us, man, female, or even children, that God has put us, all the animals in this world, have dominion over all of those things. What did we do to deserve that? We could have been born a sheep, or a goat, or something, but he made us in our own image. And then he sent Jesus to redeem us from this present evil world. Anyway, forgive me. I already cried this morning. I know I'm crying again. But anyway, to just think of that, it's mind-boggling. The love of God passes understanding. So I just want to comment on one thing, and I shared this, I think I shared last night with Daniel and Walter Jr. and Harvey, and it's on prayer. And you know, when you pray, well, someone said this phrase. The phrase was this, that, well, I'll backdrop on this. When I was in my late teens and even early 20s, my God was sports. That's all I cared about was sports, growing up in Boston. The God of this world has blinded my eyes. It's the world, you know, it's just sports. What else is there to live for sports? Whether it's baseball, football, hockey, basketball, sports. And so I shared with Brother Atley and maybe a couple of others in the book of Acts when the Ephesians are, Demetrius comes and saying, you know, he talks to the silversmiths, they're taking away our livelihood and like that, like that. But more than that, they're going to discredit the great Diana or Artemis from the Ephesians. And so for 2 hours they shouted. 2 hours they shouted, great is Diana of the Ephesians. Great, 2 hours. It was pretty, 2 hours. That's a long shout. I mean, you know, you get hoarse, you couldn't, 2 hours shouting, great is. And so I think I should with Atley or something, I should for me, great are the Chiefs of Kansas City. Great are the Chiefs of Kansas City. So I would have said that for 2 hours or more than that, you know, for the sports. That was my God. Great are the Cowboys of Dallas. Great of all the sports teams. And so it's to me, of course, it is vainglory. It's abomination. It's competition. It's a work of the flesh. It is something that will give you eternal hellfire forever and ever if you're living for that. It's abomination. Things that are highly esteemed by God of abomination and all that. All of that to say this. The word passion, I was going to look it up, but I have a passion for saying that. Okay, I went to, you know, Joplin. If I can go to Pittsburgh, do it at work. I can say that with a passion. Now this is the crux of my message, the whole thing. The external, yeah, look at Robert. He's really, he hates sports and he really goes against it. If my passion, when I go in the prayer closet and shut, and nobody sees me, that's when I'm serious. When you don't see me, when you go in your prayer closet, Jesus said, shut the door, nobody sees you. And if I get down on my knees, and if my passion for those people is not greater than me mouthing it off in front of everybody, then I'm a hypocrite. I have to have that seriousness, that love for the lost in my prayer closet. When I shut the door, he said, go in your closet, shut the door. That's when God, you're serious, and God sees us, right? He sees us when we're serious. A contrite and humble heart, he will not despise. In fact, we sang that last night in Max's. Mercy, right? Good one, right? I mean, good one is David. How did it go? Yeah, Psalm 51, but it's a contrite and broken. Thank you. A broken and he won't despise. He can't. The Lord be magnified. Just part of my daily routine. But my chief joy is Jesus. Not just because he gave me my wife and my daughters, but he gave you brethren. And I'm going to stay here till I die. And you help me. The Lord be magnified.
Thank you, Brother Robert. I didn't really think I had a testimony to share. But then something happened this last week, and as I was sitting here listening, I had to think of it, and I wanted to share it. So in the last year, I'd say, and I'm sorry to my daughters if I get some of these details wrong, but my daughters kind of discovered pen pals and have enjoyed reaching out to people across the country and in different parts, some different countries, and just kind of learning about other people through writing. And interestingly, you know, sometimes they've developed a couple relationships where there's other sisters who actually would really like to write too, and then it kind of establishes, you know, some more back and forth between families. And and they had I think one pen pal, and they wound up writing to two of the sisters and found out that they had a brother who was 5 or 6, and requested that maybe my twins could write them. And so sure enough, a letter arrived in the mail, and it was from this little boy, written in the parents' handwriting, and they had a few back and forths, and then just maybe 3 or 4 days ago, we got another letter in the mail from them, and we were visiting with the Augustinos at the time, and so I couldn't take in the full force of what it was, but the children ran up and gave us a card, and it was a picture of this little boy smiling, and it was a funeral card. And he just died this month. And he had a terrible genetic disease that ground him down until he couldn't move or walk or speak. And he just died. And 9 days before he died, he dictated his last letter to my boys, to his mom. And he couldn't finish it because he couldn't speak, and his thoughts were jumbled. And she explained that in the letter. But it was important to him to continue that relationship with my sons. Just writing about day-to-day life. And it just made me want to hold my children. And I feel like too often I take for granted, this amazing opportunity that all of us have to have a relationship with a child, and to try to pour into them and bring them up in the Lord, and then to watch one of them struggle with illness. And one of the things the mom wrote about was that as he approached death, he just kept talking about going to be with Jesus, and about heaven, and about how wonderful it would be. In the last month of life, they said that he was always close to his mom, but he couldn't stand to be out of her presence. And I suppose if there's a lesson in it for us, besides just that it's heartbreaking, it's that none of us, not a one, should take for granted the opportunity that we have in children. What a gift. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Yeah, I just really appreciated all what the brothers all shared, and all the encouragements, and what was shared in the opening, and just lots of encouragement. As me personally, as I struggle through life, I would just cover all your prayers, and being victorious, and to win these battles. Appreciate all your encouragements you are, just by many different ways. Just appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess I had thoughts that I would share a little bit about our preaching last night. And a few of us brothers, let me see, Darren, Rob, me, Sasha, and me, after butchering a cow, we went preaching. Yeah, it's just something how I can't even hardly identify with some people, and I find it hard to know what to tell them. I've just always been kind of under the impression, taught that there's a truth There's just a truth. It's not something to argue about, or not something to debate, or just, I think it was just taught, hey, the Bible here is truth, and so it's in there, and you don't question that. Well, when you get out on the streets, there's just people, they're just going to try you out on those things, and they end up being a good exercise for my Christian walk, but they're very challenging. This really quickly, this lady came by, and she was asking me those kind of questions, like, how do I know that the things that Luke, I think I had a sign about something that Luke said, and how do I know that that's true? And then I kind of made some efforts to explain how I have confidence that, and then how do you have confidence? And just like, there's just boom, boom. Just, anyhow, I was trying to tell her that I believe that there just were 12 apostles that, so that this answer to how do I know the Bible's true, I said I think that there was a circulation of scriptures early on, and then as the church grew and things became more established, there was a council that brought things together. And then she asked me, how do I not know that there was men in there that were deceived? And this thing like that, I have a hard time to answering these people correctly. So I brought it back and asked her what she thinks truth is, and she said that, well, this is how it went for me. I went to Ozark to a church for a while, and the pastor opened his Bible, and he read from it, and he looked out over the crowd, and he said, there's truth in this Bible, but it's going to be different for every one of you. He might make the whole thing just totally irrelevant to anything. And she said that's what she thinks truth is, that it's just all for the individual to decide what it is. And so on we talked, and then we got back to my scripture that I had on my sign set that Jesus said, he who marries a divorced person commits adultery. And she started cutting that down, like she doesn't believe that, and she believes that the ultimate thing is that people are happy. And so I said, so you do believe that there's a truth that's relevant, that there's a truth that you think? And I had her explain it a little further. She said, yes, that's what I believe. And I said, well, that just undoes everything you said earlier, that you said the truth is irrelevant. Now you're saying that this certain truth about being happy is relevant. And on we went, and she actually, she had to go then, but she came back, and she's like folding her hands. We're like, what did you say earlier? And he was kind of asking more about stuff, about truth. And I told her I sympathize with her. I've always been taught that there is a truth. My parents told me enough about the Bible that they would have established in me that there's truth, and it's in the Bible. But I do understand that there's a lot of people out that don't have that. So I sympathize with that. But I'm just really thankful that both you and me have come to a place of, you expressed that you think your truth is that everyone's just supposed to be happy. That would be the truth that comes from God. That would be God's ultimate will. But I think we have a little something that we can relate to if we at least both acknowledge that there's a truth that's relevant and it comes from God. I think she was quite far from, persuaded when she left, but she did take a track, and she kind of left a different person, I think. I don't know, though. I mean, they just went straight from there to the bars. I don't really know, but they walked in one of those doors. It's hard. Maybe brothers have ideas on how to answer people like that, but I don't quite have the history of it. I never was in a place where I didn't believe there's a God or that God has truth or all that. I think maybe I was telling that a little bit this morning. That's kind of how it went. We talked with other people too that were good. It's just something how people are out there that I find it hard to relate to them. They will tell you how they didn't have a dad. growing up, and you just see them like, there they are. You can't even hard relate to them. They're so taken up with drugs. And my heart goes out to them. I'm not sure how to, what can be done for them. Anyhow, I had one guy in front of me that we were trying to no, actually I was wrong. It was actually a woman. I for a while thought it was a man, but it was a woman. She was so elusive. You couldn't hardly relate to her. And then I started ignoring her. And then she just hung around, and I was battling the thoughts about, I shouldn't just throw my pearls before the swine. I don't think she could comprehend it because of the state she was in. Then that didn't feel right either. So I don't know. I think going out there seeing these people is quite a challenge, and let's hope that somehow the seed can bring forth fruit.
Yeah, some of you might be, maybe most of those that have an interest in sharing their faith with people might be familiar with the YouTube channel Sound Faith from the church there, and that Brother Dwayne visited there, David Brousseau's church, that group. There's a brother there, Daniel Willis, that's been given a series. I think he's doing a great job. I've seen up. Well, I don't know if I ever watched part 1, but I watched part 2, 3 and 4 here recently, and it's really interesting. Some years ago, maybe 5 years ago or something, 6 years ago, I don't know, I was zealously sharing my faith, passing out tracts. I was in a gas station. I ran into a lady there pumping gas, and I handed her a tract, and I said some things, and I thought what I had said was pretty logical and was a thought-provoking thing. And she said something to me, I don't remember exactly how she said it, but she said something to me where she indicated that she was Buddhist. And I had never run into a Buddhist before. I'd talked to people that were Muslim. I've read the Quran a reasonable amount. I've got things I can say, give them thoughts about things in the Quran, and so that's for Muslims and to atheists. Yeah, I've looked at a lot of different apologetic arguments for talking about science, when people want to, go to head and talk about science and about nature. And, does it look like design? Does it look like, things just kind of like given enough time, all kind of ordered themselves and those kinds of things. But running into somebody said they were Buddhist, I just didn't know what to say. And I really appreciate that Daniel Willis is doing this series, because I think he did a really excellent, amazing job explaining Hinduism and Buddhism. One of the things that he said on, I don't remember if it was Hinduism or Buddhism, but I think it was Hinduism. But he said, and I appreciate when people do this, when they actually state their sources clearly, so you can go check them out yourself and verify and all that kind of stuff. I really think that's the way we should strive to be. But yeah, he described this professor that was Hindu, and he used to teach Hinduism for years and years and years, and he passed away. And he said he'd seen people that were Hindus that would comment on this teacher, on this professor, and he'd never seen anything derogatory. So he felt like that this is a real good representation of Hinduism and Buddhism. And it was really interesting. One of the things that Daniel said is 20 years ago-ish, I think he said 20 years ago, but anyway, a while ago, he had a coworker. They worked together, and it was at a Publix grocery store, and he was Hindu. And he said one of the things that both that Hindu man and Daniel had in common is they loved to talk about spiritual things, and they also loved Chinese buffet. So they would go together quite often to the Chinese buffet and just have these deep talks. And of course, in Daniel's mind, different than the other gentleman's mind was, Daniel was like, I want this man to become a Christian, right? Well, he's like, over time, they've met so many times, he really thought that this man was heading towards conversion. And Daniel didn't know anything about Hinduism, didn't know anything. And then years later, fast forward to, somewhere near the present day, now that he understands Hinduism, he understands clearly that his foundation, where he was coming from, his worldview, that everything is God. That's one of the basic tenets of Hinduism. Gives him a very different perspective, the Hindu guy, his friend, than where we're coming from. And I think the point with that I feel like I got from that, I think it would be good for all of us, is to remember when you're talking to people, not everyone has the same, I don't even know how to say it. I'll just say foundation, like the same interpretation lens or examination lens of reality that you have. And so you may be thinking that you're not making progress or that you are making progress, and maybe they're just seeing it very differently. So one thing I would really suggest, if anyone is sharing their faith, if you haven't checked out that series, I really encourage you to check it out. It's Arguments Against Christianity there on the Sound Faith YouTube channel, and listen to those different messages. I've gone through the Buddhism part and the Hinduism part a number of times. I want to do it some more. And I feel better equipped now if I bump into people to have that thinking. And one of the things that towards the end of the Buddhism one that Daniel shared is like, and let's see if I can characterize this rightly of how he presented it. Is he said, many of us probably hear this, what I'd shared in the previous message, this is what Daniel said, right? The previous message about Hinduism, and then we see how Buddhism springs out of Hinduism. That's where it started, and it's got some things in common, but there's some differences here. And we probably think, wow, here in this culture, like, that's just not us. I mean, we're not like in China or something. Like, that's just not us. And he started sharing some clips of people, some of the people that he shared from the clips actually presented themselves as Christians. And, like they would be given a message, and they would interweave these thoughts into them. And he said, Daniel's point is like, this is important for us to recognize. This is where this stuff comes from and stuff. So anyway, I'll just share that. If you're, sharing your faith, you might want to check that series out.